Hi boys and girls, my name is Mr. Craig Knitt, and I represent the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Green Bay, specifically the Youth Arts Initiative, which we've been doing for more than 5 years now. We are very proud of what we've done with kids, and I'm thinking here now, what if you're not a member of the Youth Arts Initiative with Mr. Craig? Can you still watch these videos? Won't he get mad? No, I'll get excited. I want you to watch these. If you're not one of my kids already, please watch these videos and become one of the super crew that gets the chance to make these awesome art projects. Now, I've got some cool stuff I want to share with you today, but I have a little bit of a return to last week's shout out. If you remember, I had this little sculpture here that we celebrated, especially with its mullet. Well, some of you kids out there said, Mr. Craig, if it's really happened, I want to see a picture of it. Well, here you go. Here's the picture of Mr. Craig with his mullet in my classroom with two of my students from years and years and years back. It shows, obviously, that was me. And it did happen. Now, today's special thing that I want to share with you is another thing that I found. This isn't it, but this is sort of close to it. If you look at this, there is some, this is a glass cube, and inside of the glass cube is some penguins, and this was given to me by a friend years ago, and that's cool. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Do I like penguins? Penguins are okay, but do they really make me excited? Not really. One of the things that would be very interesting is if inside of that glass cube there would be a Mr. Craig. Yeah. So this one here I had made when I was in Las Vegas years and years ago. Alright, and you can see that it's three-dimensional, and here's my face. It's trapped in glass. And it was done with a laser point etching tool, which is pretty darn awesome. Now, if you've been following along with us, you've been working on illustrations, comic panels, specifically for our story about what we've done during this isolation period. And honestly, I think these are going to really be a great story. And if you haven't started yet, keep in mind, we're probably going to be working on these when we get back into the classroom. So it'd be a good idea to get at least a couple done so that you know what's going on. So far, I've gotten a handful finished myself, but I want to kind of go through some of the things that might be problem areas for you guys. First and foremost, Mr. Craig, we don't have our pens that you gave us years ago. They're already gone. We've used them up a couple of months ago. So we might not have the tools that you guys need. You might not have some of these inking pens. And here's another cool thing, is while I was searching for materials today, I found this drawing kit that I had bought a long time ago, and it's actually pen nibs. And it's little pen tips that fit into the holder, and you can dip it into the ink and draw with it. And now these are tools that are used from so many years back. This is a very, very old drawing tool, but it's a very effective drawing tool, and I'd like to demonstrate with these in maybe next episode. But this episode, I want to kind of talk to you guys about the tools that you guys have at your disposal. So you guys have tools, whether you know it or not. And if you don't have a pencil, and I feel bad for you, look, a rubber pencil, rubber pencil, rubber pencil, rubber pencil. No, it's not. It's real. What we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate how you can do your drawing using a ballpoint pen. Now, most houses or homes will have a pencil and a ballpoint pen. Now those are things that you guys can use to draw with. A pen specifically. Now there's a lot of different things that you guys can do with a ballpoint pen. The lines are always going to be the same thickness. So if you're going to need to vary the thickness up, you're going to have to go over those lines quite a few times. I'd like to show you guys a drawing that I did last week using a ballpoint pen to kind of demonstrate how to make your drawings. So here was my sloppy copy I'm working on a drawing of myself down in the basement, scoping out these bugs that I was talking about. And as you look here, I'm just trying to make some of my lines, and I am already going over some of the lines numerous times. Barely ever will I just make one pass over the line because it just makes it so thin. So I'm working carefully to build some tone, and what I'm going to talk about probably quite a bit in this lesson is cross hatching. When you make lines and little marks that go over themselves with a ballpoint pen or a marker or a pencil even, that's going to add a little bit more darkness and shading in those areas. If you look there while I'm working on the arm, the underarm, I put quite a few different little marks to add a kind of a shading underneath there. And now that also gives form to the arm. So I want you guys to keep that in mind. And this is something that I traditionally love to do in most of my drawings, is cross-hatching like that. But it is something that will add tone, and if you do it with different directions in mind, it can actually add quite a level of interest. Now, as you can see, I'm filling in some of these areas with more and more tone, and there the camera just fell, so I had to tape it back up. I'm not kidding either, that's the truth. But anyways, we're back to the drawing now, and I'm just filling in some of the details that were in the space. And again, you know how much I love detail, so I'm just going to fill this in. And as I said before, the more detail that you guys can add, the more interest, the more your viewers are going to want to watch that. So as I'm going on here, here's another little tip for you guys. When you're drawing things that are closer to you, the blacks are richer and darker. They can actually, as they go back into space, it can create a level of perspective, or a level of distance. It's called atmospheric perspective. And if you make your lines in the distance a little bit lighter, it creates this distance in the drawing. And now that's something that works really, really well on a drawing that goes outside. But inside, there's not really going to see much atmospheric perspective in play. And that's another thing I want to talk to you guys about sometime, is perspective. Because I think you're right at the right age where you're going to start wanting to learn these things. And it's tricky. And I've seen kids really struggle with perspective. But then all of a sudden, something clicks in their brain. And it goes poof. And all of a sudden, they're like, oh, I get it now. I understand what perspective means. It's a math skill, or a logic skill, or a spatial skill that really can come by developing and really struggling with it to get yourself through it. Now, as you can see, I'm just still here filling in some of these details, and thank goodness that I'm doing this in fast forward for you guys, because if you guys had to watch me drawing this, it probably took me more than an hour to make this little drawing with all the little fine line details that I've added. But with the magic of cameras, we can speed that up and get that to completion as soon as possible. And here you can see I'm adding them bugs to the wall, and I'm not kidding either. These doggone beetles are still around. But this is the story of how I first noted them before I freaked out about them. So it's like, oh my gosh, beetles. So this is this drawing here. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to colorize it yet, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I'm going to scan it into the computer, and then I can actually take my lines and make them even richer and darker. We'll see how that works. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to end up with when it's all said and done, but it should be fine. And here I'm putting in my last little tips. And the weird thing is too, is that pen that you see there, I used that to vote when I went to the voting booth. They gave me a pen, and I had to touch the screen with the pen so that nobody's getting any germs on the screen at this time of the year, or this time of our human life existence. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And now I'm using my eraser to clean it all up, and you got to be careful, because if that ink is not dry, it will smudge. We do not want it to be smudgy at all. That was my drawing that I used ballpoint pen for. So you can, if you are stuck at home, use a ballpoint pen to kind of get your illustrations done. Another tool that you have at your disposal is a pencil, like I said, and you can You can make final drawings with this, but it's going to really be a challenge. All right, here's one of the panels that I did where I wanted to try and show myself raking the leaves outside. I've laid out a skeleton of myself, and I'm just kind of using some really dark lines now. Remember how much I've been on you kids about making your lines so light? Well, now if you're going to use your pencil lines as your final drawing, you have to make your pencil lines nice and dark. Now the problem with that is that anytime your hand goes over those lines, it's going to streak it and smudge it, and we don't want that to happen. That gets to be really, really tricky. Now if you look at the side of my building, I have some one-point perspective going on there. And yes, again, I've talked about that in the last drawing that we did. Perspective helps to create this illusion of space in your illustrations, and that's something that I definitely need to share with you guys a little bit more. And now I'm using a lot of pressure to push down on some of my darkest lines, but as I'm filling in tones, I can start using some very thin and light pressure to kind of get some variation in the gray tones that I'm using. Yes, indeed. Like the side of the building, I want to put on this siding that we've got in our house and that we put on a couple years back. And we have a nice little country house that's over 100 years old. Yeah, it's older than Mr. Craig, if you can believe that. Come on, you guys, I'm not that old. What are you talking about? Yes, I am. So I'm putting on some of these details, but I'm also adding some tone as I'm going to give the building a little bit of a shadow on the one side, so that it creates this this depth. And now I was raking all this dead grass on the side, so I had to kind of put a pile of dead grass there, nice dark lines around the outside of the box, so that we could kind of use that as our key lines. And then using some perspective as the driveway goes back into space, although you can't really see it right now. But as I'm going, I'm putting in my horizon line. Remember that from last time? We're talking about horizon lines. Yes, we were. Yes, we were. That was one of our keywords, guys and gals. Don't tell me that it wasn't, because you were there. We're going to just continue now, putting in, now in this outside picture, you can kind of get the illusion of atmospheric perspective, where as we go back into the distance, the blacks are still black, but they don't appear black because of the molecules of moisture in the air. Now, I did cheat there. I smudged the paper. Try not to smudge as much as you can, because it makes your drawings look very dirty unless you're doing it with a real intent. And I'm actually using my eraser as a drawing tool right now, where I'm erasing into my drawing to get some of my clouds, get some tone in there. And here is my pencil drawing, guys and gals, almost finished for your approval. And this could actually be, this is one of my final panels for my story. So there you have a demonstration of two separate types of tools for drawing. Number one was a pencil. Look at that, it's a rubber pencil. And number two is a pen. Look at that, it's a rubber pen. These are two different drawing types. They are called mediums, okay? So that's today's word, medium. A different type of drawing medium could be chalk or pastel, or it could be charcoal. So you could use these different mediums for different things. So again, this is today's word, medium. But now let's say that we're going to use a couple different mediums while we're drawing. Let's say we're going to use pen and ink, and then we're going to draw over the top of pencil. Then we're going to use some watercolor. Yeah, because paint can be a medium as well. Paint, and when you're dealing with paint, there's a whole bunch of different kinds that you can deal with. There's watercolor, oil paints. I like to use acrylic paints, which are plastic-based. Gouache. Yeah, there's a thing called gouache, and I've always wanted to use them, so maybe I could do a demonstration with gouache. Ooh. But there's also photography, and that can be a medium. But when we combine these mediums, it becomes a mixed media. Now this is today's big word, super word, mixed media. And I want you guys to remember that, because anytime you're going to combine all these things, if it's a collage and you have all these cool things going on, markers, crayons, cut paper, all these different things combined, it becomes a mixed media project. All right? Now, I was going to demonstrate how to use watercolor paint, but I'm already, goodness gracious, I just don't know when to stop talking. So there's just so much going on. I will demonstrate how to start using some coloring techniques in the next class that we have. I wanted to go through these steps here as a refresher for the kids that know them, but also as a learning tool for the kids that don't. So step number 1 is to create your stories. And for us, our stories are, what are we doing during this isolation, during this quarantine? And write those down. Write all that stuff down so that you don't forget it. And it's like, oh, Mr. Craig, I'm never going to forget everything because I'm so smart and I can remember everything. Liar! We forget things all the time. Write it down so that you've got a mental note on a sheet of paper, because a mental note up here can all of a sudden go and it's gone. So creating our story is all about those different things. All the things that we're doing, whether we're raking, whether we're outside going swimming, I'm sure that we're not doing that, or whether we're playing with puzzles, or playing with video games, or we're doing schoolwork that really stinks, or schoolwork that's really fun. All these different things are part of your story, so make sure that you're getting them down. Number 2 is design the characters. We don't have to spend a lot of time doing that because you guys are the characters. Yes, you are your characters in your own story. So that's fantastic. Now, if you want to design a silly version of yourself or a serious version of yourself, that can work too. Number 3, make your sloppy copy. I can't stress that enough, is making a sloppy copy for your drawing is going to save you time ultimately. And some of you guys are like, why can't I just draw the real thing right away? Well, if I know loosely what I want to do where I'm making my picture, it's easier for me to just go in there and get things perfect the second time. It's also a really good tip for us when we're going to be working on things in the future as adults. Being able to plan is a strategy that you guys can use in the future. Crazy. Step number 4 is to pencil out your drawing, kind of get it sharpened out as far as your pencils are concerned. And if you're using a pencil as your media, ooh, look at that, I'm using our words, media. If you're using a pencil as your media, you can actually incorporate that. Number 5, adding your ink, or however you're going to finish up your drawing. So that can be a step that we're going to change. And then step 6 is finishing them up, and we'll finish them up in the classroom in the future. Again, in the future. And then finally, step number 7 is sharing our art. So all these different things are coming into play. And let's thank all of our kids from our steps, the drawings that I did of them, for actually helping us out. So let's say hi. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you, Azariana. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Xavier. Thank you, Christopher, and Azalea, and Tegan, and Rowan as well. I miss all you guys. I hope that you're missing me at least a little bit. So, this is Mr. Craig, and I got a little talky here again, but hopefully you guys have picked up some things, and hopefully you're staying on track. If you're not, you still can start. You can still start right now to get a panel or 2. Right now, I've only gotten 3 or 4 done. So you're not that far ahead of me. 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 4 finished, and I've got 1 that's almost ready to be colorized. So you guys are probably right on track. So thanks again. Mr. Craig here from the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Green Bay and the Youth Arts Initiative. And I hope that you guys are staying happy, healthy, sane, and awesome. See you guys soon.